People rarely tell you who they truly are. They show it quietly, constantly, without realizing it. Most people miss it, not because the signals aren't there, but because they've never been trained to see. Imagine walking into a room and instantly sensing the emotional temperature. You know who feels confident, who is hiding tension, who is performing, and who is being real. No guessing, no overthinking, just clarity. This ability isn't magic, and it isn't intuition alone. It's perception, trained, sharpened, and grounded in psychology. This audiobook is about that perception, not manipulation, not mind games, not control. This is awareness, because the truth is simple. Human beings are always communicating, even when they're silent. Every pause, every glance, every shift in posture carries information. Long before words appear, the body has already spoken. Long after the sentence ends, the emotion remains. If you've ever felt something was off about a person, but couldn't explain why, that wasn't imagination. That was your nervous system picking up patterns your conscious mind hadn't learned to decode yet. And once you learn how to read those patterns, people stop being confusing. You stop guessing motives. You stop personalizing reactions. You stop being surprised. Most people listen only to words, but words are edited, filtered, rehearsed. Behavior is not. The body leaks truth. The face flickers before the mind catches up. The voice trembles before the story stabilizes. These are not flaws. They are features of being human. And when you learn to read them, something powerful happens. You become calmer. When you understand people, you don't react as quickly. You don't get pulled into emotional chaos. You don't take things personally that were never about you in the first place. Clarity replaces confusion. Curiosity replaces judgment. And calm replaces anxiety. This is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about becoming aware of yourself, because reading people starts with regulation. If you are reactive, distracted, or emotionally flooded, you will misread everything. But when you are grounded, present, and attentive, you begin to see clearly. You notice inconsistencies without obsessing over them. You sense discomfort without accusing. You recognize sincerity without needing proof. This skill changes how you move through the world. In conversations, you'll know when to speak and when to pause. In relationships, you'll feel the difference between affection and attachment. In leadership, you'll sense resistance before it turns into conflict. And in moments that matter, you'll trust yourself more than the noise around you. This audiobook will guide you through the core layers of human behavior. You'll learn how to observe actions instead of clinging to words. You'll understand why the face reveals emotion before logic forms an excuse. You'll decode body language not as isolated gestures, but as meaningful patterns. You'll hear what's hidden in tone, rhythm, and silence. You'll recognize how stress exposes deception, not through stereotypes, but through subtle leaks of truth. You'll also learn something deeper. People are predictable, but not shallow. Personality patterns shape behavior far more than moods do. Context matters more than isolated signals. Emotional intelligence matters more than raw observation. And intuition, when trained and tested, becomes one of your most reliable tools, not because it's mystical, but because it's informed. This is about seeing people clearly without becoming cold, understanding deeply without becoming naive, and influencing ethically without manipulating. As you listen, you may start noticing things immediately. A pause that feels heavier than before. A smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. A shift in energy you would have ignored in the past. Don't rush to conclusions. This is not about labeling people. It's about expanding perception because the goal is not to expose. The goal is to connect. When people feel seen, not analyzed, not judged, they open. Trust forms quietly, and influence follows naturally without force. The most respected people in any room are rarely the loudest. They are the most perceptive. They respond instead of react. They listen beyond words, and their presence alone creates safety. By the end of this audiobook, you won't walk away with tricks. You'll walk away with awareness. You won't feel superior to others. You'll feel more grounded within yourself. So, as we begin, let go of the urge to catch people. Instead, learn to observe them. Let go of judgment. Choose curiosity. Let go of reactivity. Choose presence. Because when perception becomes your skill, clarity becomes your advantage. Let's begin. Chapter 1. See behavior, not words. Words are easy to shape. Behavior is much harder to fake. Most people believe what they hear. Very few people pay attention to what they see. And that single difference explains why some people are constantly confused by others, while a few seem to understand human behavior almost effortlessly. From the moment a person enters a room, they are already communicating. The way they walk, how fast they move, where their eyes go first, how their shoulders carry tension or ease. None of this is accidental. These signals form long before the first word is spoken. And once you train yourself to notice them, you realize something unsettling but freeing. People reveal themselves all the time. They just don't announce it out loud. Words are edited. They pass through filters of politeness, fear, ego, and social expectation. Behavior does not go through the same process. The body reacts faster than the mind can correct. That gap, sometimes only a fraction of a second, is where truth lives. Think about how often you've heard someone say, "I'm fine," while everything about them suggested otherwise. Their posture collapsed slightly. Their eyes avoided yours. Their movements became tighter, more controlled. Your mind may have accepted their words, but your body felt something didn't align. That feeling wasn't imagination. It was perception without a language. Behavior speaks first. Words explain later. To understand people instantly, you must shift where you place your attention. Most people listen for content. Skilled observers watch for patterns. They understand that a single action means very little, but repeated behavior under similar conditions means everything. This is where the concept of baseline behavior becomes essential. Every person has a baseline, a natural way of moving, speaking, gesturing, and occupying space when they feel safe and unthreatened. Some people talk with their hands naturally. Others barely move. Some maintain steady eye contact. Others glance away often. None of these traits mean anything on their own. What matters is deviation. When someone suddenly changes how they normally behave, something internal has shifted. Their nervous system has reacted to a stimulus, an idea, a question, a memory, or a perceived threat. And that reaction leaks through the body before it ever reaches words. Deviation is the signal. Consistency is the key. Imagine a person who is usually relaxed and open, suddenly becoming rigid during a specific topic. Their shoulders tighten. Their breathing becomes shallow. Their answers shorten. This doesn't automatically mean deception, but it does mean relevance. Something about that moment matters to them. Most misunderstandings happen because people interpret behavior in isolation. A crossed arm becomes defensive. A lack of eye contact becomes dishonest. This is not reading people. This is projecting assumptions. Context is everything. Crossed arms might mean defensiveness, or they might mean the room is cold. Lack of eye contact might signal deception, or it might signal respect, introversion, or cultural conditioning. The mistake is not observing. The mistake is concluding too quickly. Real understanding comes from observing behavior over time, across situations, and under different emotional pressures. Patterns emerge naturally when you stop rushing to label. Behavior under pressure tells the truth. Words try to hide. Pay attention to moments of discomfort. When people feel challenged, surprised, or emotionally exposed, the body reacts before the mind can manage appearances. Feet shift toward exits, hands retreat or fidget. Posture changes subtly. The voice may stay calm, but the body betrays tension. These moments are not flaws in human behavior. They are survival responses. The body is wired to protect, signal, and adapt. When you learn to read these signals, you're not exploiting weakness. You're understanding humanity. There's a reason professionals who work in high-stakes environments, negotiators, interrogators, behavioral analysts, rely more on observation than on statements. They know that people can rehearse stories, but they can't rehearse every muscle movement, breath pattern, and micro-adjustment under stress. But this skill is not reserved for professionals. Anyone can learn to observe behavior accurately if they are willing to slow down and remain present. The challenge is not intelligence. The challenge is patience. Most people are distracted. Observers are still. When you are present, you begin to notice things others overlook. Who mirrors whom in conversation? Who leans in? And who pulls away? Who takes up space? And who shrinks when authority enters the room? These are not random movements. They are reflections of internal states. Mirroring, for example, is one of the most reliable indicators of repower. When people feel aligned, they unconsciously synchronize posture, gestures, and even breathing. When that mirroring breaks, something has shifted. Interest fades, resistance appears, or emotional distance forms. The body doesn't argue, it adjusts. Another powerful indicator lies in how people manage space. Confident individuals tend to occupy space comfortably. Insecure individuals often minimize themselves. Dominant personalities may lean back and expand. Anxious ones may lean forward or retreat entirely. None of these signals are moral judgments. They are data. Understanding behavior also requires humility. You are not observing to prove yourself right. You're observing to understand what is happening beneath the surface. That means holding multiple possibilities without rushing to conclusions. This is where emotional neutrality becomes critical. If you are emotionally reactive, eager to confirm your suspicions or defend your ego, you will misread behavior. You will see what you expect, not what is actually there. But when you stay calm and curious, behavior reveals itself clearly. The goal is not certainty. The goal is clarity. As you practice this skill, something interesting happens internally. You stop taking things personally. When someone reacts defensively, you no longer assume it's about you. You recognize it as information about their internal state. When someone withdraws, you don't chase approval. You observe the shift and respond thoughtfully. This changes how people experience you. They feel less judged. They feel more understood. And because you are no longer emotionally pulled into every interaction, you gain something rare: composure. That composure becomes your advantage. You speak less, but with more intention. You listen more without tension. And people sense it. Behavior never lies completely. It only whispers. Your job is to learn how to listen with your eyes. In the chapters ahead, you'll learn how the face reveals emotion before logic forms, how the body signals intention long before decisions are verbalized, how the voice carries emotional truth beneath words. But all of it begins here with observation, not aggressive observation, not suspicious observation, but grounded awareness. Because when you see behavior clearly, you stop guessing who people are. You start understanding how they feel. And from that understanding comes calm connection and quiet influence. This is where reading people truly begins, not with words, with what happens before them. Chapter 2. The face reveals what the mind hides. The face speaks before permission is granted. It reacts before the story is edited, and it often tells the truth the mind is trying to suppress. Most people believe they can control their facial expressions. They think that if they choose the right words, keep a calm tone, and smile at the right moment, their inner world remains hidden. But the human face is not designed for secrecy. It is designed for expression. Before a thought fully forms, emotion moves the muscles of the face. This happens automatically outside conscious control. And for a brief moment, sometimes less than a second, the truth appears. These flashes are called micro-expressions. They are not theories. They are biology. A micro-expression is a rapid, involuntary facial movement that reveals genuine emotion even when someone is trying to hide it. It happens when the emotional brain reacts faster than the rational brain can intervene. By the time a person realizes what they're feeling, their face is already spoken. This is why the face is one of the most honest storytellers in human communication. Across cultures, languages, and backgrounds, humans express the same core emotions in the same ways. Happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, and contempt appear on the face with remarkable consistency. These expressions are wired into the nervous system. They are not learned. They are inherited. Emotion doesn't ask for permission. It appears. A genuine smile, for example, involves more than the mouth. It engages the muscles around the eyes, creating subtle crinkles that cannot be faked for long. A forced smile lifts the lips, but the eyes remain flat. The difference is subtle, but once you learn to see it, it becomes obvious. Sadness pulls the inner corners of the eyebrows upward and softens the entire face. Anger lowers the brows, tightens the jaw, and sharpens the gaze. Fear widens the eyes and stretches the mouth horizontally, preparing the body for threat. Disgust wrinkles the nose and raises the upper lip in rejection. Contempt appears as a one-sided lip raise, a quiet signal of superiority or dismissal. These expressions don't last long when someone is hiding them, but they always leak. Truth leaks before control arrives. The mistake most people make is looking too hard. They stare, searching for confirmation, which only makes them miss what matters. Micro-expressions are not caught through intensity. They are caught through relaxed awareness. When your attention is soft, you notice changes, a flicker, a tightening, a momentary drop in warmth. These signals often appear when someone is challenged, surprised, accused, or emotionally exposed. Timing matters more than shape. An expression that appears immediately after a stimulus is far more reliable than one that comes later. Real emotion reacts instantly. Fabricated emotion arrives with delay. If someone hears unexpected news and their surprise comes a moment too late, the emotion may be constructed rather than genuine. The face also reveals comfort and discomfort through self-soothing behaviors. Touching the nose, rubbing the neck, covering the mouth, or pressing the lips together are all ways the nervous system attempts to regulate stress. These actions are not proof of deception, but they are signs of internal tension. Stress always seeks release. Another powerful signal lies in symmetry. Genuine emotions tend to be symmetrical across the face. Forced expressions often appear uneven. One side lifts more than the other. One eye engages while the other remains tense. These imbalances reveal effort rather than authenticity. The eyes themselves are deeply connected to emotional arousal. When people feel excitement, attraction, or fear, their pupils dilate. When they feel threatened or focused aggressively, the gaze narrows and fixes. Rapid blinking often accompanies anxiety. Prolonged staring may signal dominance or control. E. The eyes don't lie, they react. But reading the face accurately requires discipline. You must resist the urge to jump to conclusions. A single expression means very little without context. Someone may show fear because they feel insecure, not because they're lying. Someone may show anger because they feel disrespected, not because they're hostile. This is where congruence becomes critical. Do the facial expressions match the words, the tone, and the situation? When everything aligns, communication feels natural. When something is off, your nervous system notices before your mind can explain why. That feeling of something doesn't sit right is often your subconscious detecting incongruence. The face says one thing, the words say another. Your job is not to accuse. Your job is to notice. As you train this skill, you'll begin to see faces differently. You'll notice how quickly emotion flashes before it's suppressed. You'll catch brief expressions that contradict polite responses. You'll sense hesitation in moments that seem confident on the surface, but something else will happen as well. You'll become more compassionate. When you see how hard people work to hide what they feel, you stop assuming malice. You begin to see fear behind defensiveness, sadness behind irritability, insecurity behind control. The face reveals not just truth, but vulnerability. This understanding changes how you respond. Instead of pushing, you soften. Instead of reacting, you pause. Instead of judging, you adjust. Reading faces is not about catching lies. It's about understanding emotional reality. When someone feels seen without being exposed, trust forms naturally. And trust is the foundation of influence, leadership, and connection. The face is a map, but it must be read with care. As we move forward, remember this principle. Micro-expressions are clues, not conclusions. They invite curiosity, not certainty. When combined with body language, vocal cues, and context, they become powerful guides. But alone, they are simply whispers of emotion. And learning to hear those whispers is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Because when you understand what people feel before they explain it, you don't just communicate better, you connect deeper. Chapter 3. The body speaks before the mouth. The body reacts before words form. It moves before logic explains, and it often reveals what the mind is trying to hide. Long before language existed, human beings vived by reading movement. A slight shift in posture signaled danger. A relaxed stance signaled safety. A sudden freeze meant threat. These instincts are not outdated. They are still active, shaping how we interpret others every single day. The body is not decoration. It is communication. When someone speaks, their body is already answering. It answers with posture, with orientation, with tension or ease. And while words can be rehearsed, the body responds in real time to emotion, stress, and intention. Most people look at body language incorrectly. They search for single gestures and rush to conclusions. Crossed arms mean defensiveness. Leaning back means arrogance. Avoiding eye contact means dishonesty. This kind of thinking turns observation into stereotype. The truth is simpler and more precise. One signal means nothing. Patterns mean everything. Body language must be read in clusters. A cluster is a group of physical behaviors that appear together and reinforce the same emotional message. When posture, movement, facial expression, and spatial behavior align, the body is telling a coherent story. For example, crossed arms alone are meaningless. But crossed arms, combined with leaning away, minimal eye contact, tight lips, and feet pointed toward the exit, that cluster suggests withdrawal or resistance. The message doesn't come from one gesture. It comes from the harmony of signals. The body speaks in sentences, not words. Posture is one of the clearest indicators of internal state. Confident individuals tend to stand upright with relaxed shoulders and an open chest. Their movements are efficient and unhurried. Insecure or anxious individuals often compress themselves. Shoulders rise. The head tilts downward. Movements become smaller, tighter, more guarded. This is not about judgment. It's about awareness. People take up space when they feel safe. They shrink when they feel threatened. This response happens automatically. The nervous system is constantly scanning for danger or approval, adjusting the body accordingly. Feet are often the most honest part of the body. While people consciously control their facial expressions and hand gestures, they rarely think about their feet. When someone's feet point, the body is preparing to leave, even if the words say otherwise. Feet follow intention before words admit it. Weight shifting, toe tapping, or constant repositioning often indicate impatience, nervousness, or internal conflict. Again, context matters, but repeated foot behavior under specific topics reveals emotional relevance. Hands tell their own story. Open palms often signal openness and comfort. Hidden hands behind the back and pockets under tables can indicate discomfort or a desire to conceal. Excessive fidgeting with objects, jewelry, or clothing is often a self-soothing behavior triggered by stress. When people feel calm, their hands move naturally in sync with their speech. When they feel anxious or deceptive, hand movement either becomes restricted or erratic. The body struggles to maintain control under pressure. Control requires effort. Effort leaves traces. Another powerful indicator is mirroring. When two people feel aligned, they unconsciously synchronize. Posture matches posture. Tempo matches tempo. Even breathing begins to align. This is not imitation. It's rapport expressed physically. When mirroring disappears, something has shifted. A sudden break in synchronization may signal disagreement, discomfort, or emotional distance. It doesn't mean conflict is guaranteed. It means connection has changed. Skilled observers notice this immediately and adjust rather than push. Space management, also known as proxemics, reveals boundaries and power dynamics. Confident individuals are comfortable with closeness and distance. Dominant personalities may invade space to assert control. Submissive individuals often step back or angle away to reduce presence. Different cultures manage space differently, but discomfort always shows up in the body. Leaning away, stepping back, or turning the torso partially away are signs the nervous system is creating distance for safety. Distance is communication, so is closeness. The body also reveals stress through pacifying behaviors. These are actions designed to calm the nervous system. Rubbing the neck, touching the face, smoothing clothing, or clasping hands tightly all serve the same function. Regulation. These behaviors are not lies, they are signals. Stress is not deception. A deception creates stress. When someone experiences internal conflict, whether from dishonesty, fear, or pressure, the body leaks it. Breathing becomes shallow. Movements lose fluidity. Muscles tighten. These changes are subtle but consistent. Baseline behavior is essential here. If a person normally fidgets, fidgeting means nothing. If a normally calm person begins fidgeting during a specific topic, something has changed. That change is the data. You are not looking for nervousness. You are looking for deviation. Context protects accuracy. A cold room causes crossed arms. A long meeting causes slouching. A crowded space causes reduced eye contact. Behavior must always be interpreted within environmental and emotional context. Without context, observation becomes assumption. This is why skilled readers slow down. They gather data over time. They watch how behavior shifts when topics change, when power enters the room, when emotional stakes rise. They do not rush to label. They wait for patterns to emerge. As you become more attuned to body language, you'll notice something else. Your own body. You'll feel when you tense up. You'll notice when you lean away or hold your breath. This awareness is not accidental. Reading others begins with awareness of self. Your body speaks too. When you regulate your own posture, breathing, and movement, others respond. Calm posture invites calm. Open orientation invites openness. Stillness creates safety. This is not manipulation. It's regulation. People trust those whose bodies feel predictable and grounded. When your movements are measured and your posture is relaxed, others unconsciously feel safer around you. Safety invites honesty. Safety invites connection. The most powerful communicators rarely move the most. They move intentionally. They don't fidget to fill space. They don't dominate with gestures. They allow silence and stillness to do part of the work. Stillness communicates confidence. As you practice reading the body, remember this principle. You are not decoding machines. You're observing humans responding to their internal worlds. Compassion sharpens accuracy. Judgment distorts it. When you see someone withdraw, don't push. When you see tension rise, slow down. When you see openness, meet it with presence. The body always tells a story. Your job is to learn its language. In the next chapter, we'll move from what the body shows to what the voice reveals. Because even when words are chosen carefully, the voice carries emotion the body cannot hide. But everything begins here with movement, posture, space, and stillness. Before the mouth speaks, the body has already answered. Chapter 4. Hear the emotion behind the voice. Words carry information. The voice carries emotion. And emotion carries truth. Most people listen only to what is being said. They focus on sentences, logic, and meaning. But long before the brain analyzes content, the nervous system responds to sound. Tone, pace, pitch, volume, and silence reach us first. They bypass logic and go straight to feeling. This is why someone can say the right words and still feel wrong. The voice is not just a delivery system. It is an emotional signal. Every human voice carries layers. Beneath the words lies tension or ease. Beneath the tone lies confidence or fear. Beneath the rhythm lie certainty or doubt. And while people can rehearse what to say, controlling how it sounds under pressure is far more difficult. This is called paralanguage, the emotional layer of speech. It includes tone, pitch, speed, volume, pauses, and vocal texture. Together, these elements often reveal more than the words themselves. When words and voice align, communication feels clean. When they don't, something is hidden. Tone is the emotional color of speech. A warm tone suggests openness and safety. A flat tone may signal detachment or fatigue. A sharp tone often reveals irritation, even when the words sound polite. People instinctively respond to tone before they process meaning. This is why sarcasm works. The tone contradicts the words. Pay attention to tonal shifts. When a person's tone changes suddenly during a specific topic, the nervous system is reacting. Their words may remain controlled, but emotion has surfaced. This shift is often subtle, a tightening, a cooling, a slight edge, but it is rarely accidental. Pitch is another powerful indicator. Under stress, the vocal cords tighten. This causes pitch to rise. People may sound strained thin or slightly higher than usual. This does not automatically mean deception, but it does indicate emotional arousal. Fear, anxiety, excitement, and pressure all elevate pitch. A calm, steady pitch usually signals emotional regulation. But be careful. Some people consciously lower their voice to project confidence or dominance. When this sounds forced, it lacks natural variation and feels unnatural to the listener. Authenticity has rhythm. Performance has tension. The pace of speech reveals mental load. When people speak unusually fast, they may be anxious, excited, or trying to move past a topic quickly. When they speak unusually slow, they may be choosing words carefully or withholding information. Excessive detail is often a red flag, not because details are bad, but because truth is usually simple. Lies require structure. They require consistency. They require monitoring, and that cognitive load often leaks into speech patterns. The brain struggles to multitask under pressure. Pauses tell their own story. A confident pause adds weight. It signals thoughtfulness and control. But a hesitant pause, especially after a simple question, often indicates internal scrambling. When someone repeats a question before answering, they may be buying time to construct a response. Silence is not empty. It is informative. People uncomfortable with silence often rush to fill it. Truthful speakers tend to tolerate silence better. Deceptive or anxious speakers feel pressure to maintain flow, fearing that silence exposes them. Listen for fillers. Like these are normal in everyday speech, but a sudden increase in fillers during a specific topic suggests stress. The speaker's verbal flow is breaking under cognitive or emotional load. The voice cracks when emotion leaks throat. Clearing, coughing, or swallowing are physiological responses to stress. Under pressure, the throat dries and vocal cords tighten. This is not illness. It is biology, the body preparing for threat. Volume also matters. Raised volume often signals emotional intensity, anger, excitement, defensiveness. Lowered volume may indicate shame, secrecy, or vulnerability. Whispering in a normal conversation often suggests something the speaker does not want fully exposed. Consistently, loud speakers may be asserting dominance. Consistently quiet speakers may avoid conflict, but again, baseline matters more than assumptions. You are not listening for loud or soft. You are listening for change. Another key element is congruence between voice and words. When someone says, "I'm not upset," but their voice tightens or sharpens emotion, contradicts content. When someone claims confidence, but their voice trembles slightly, uncertainty has surfaced. These mismatches create unease in listeners. Even if they can't explain why that uneasy feeling is perception, trust it, but verify. The voice also reveals social dynamics. Dominant speakers interrupt more, speak longer, and use declarative statements. Submissive speakers hedge maybe, I think. Kind of. Neither style is good or bad. They reveal how someone perceives their position in the interaction. Pay attention to how a person's voice changes depending on who they're speaking to. Do they sound respectful with authority, but dismissive with subordinates? Do they soften with some people and harden with others? These shifts reveal values, insecurities, and power awareness. The voice reveals self-concept. Emotionally, intelligent listeners don't just hear words. They hear fear, excitement, resistance, and relief. They notice when energy rises and falls. They sense when someone is speaking from truth and when they are speaking from defense. But this skill requires discipline. If you are planning your response while someone is speaking, you will miss everything. If you are waiting to prove a point, you will misread emotion. To hear the voice clearly, you must listen without agenda. Presence sharpens perception. When you listen fully, people who feel it, they slow down. They reveal more. Their voice relaxes, and when their guard drops, truth surfaces naturally without pressure. This is not about catching lies. It's about understanding emotional reality. In negotiations, relationships, leadership, and conflict, vocal awareness gives you an edge. Not because it makes you manipulative, but because it makes you responsive. When someone says, "I'm not upset," but their voice tightens or sharpens emotion, contradicts content. When someone claims confidence, but their voice trembles slightly, uncertainty has surfaced. These mismatches create unease in listeners. Even if they can't explain why that uneasy feeling is perception, trust it, but verify. The voice also reveals social dynamics. Dominant speakers interrupt more, speak longer, and use declarative statements. Submissive speakers hedge maybe, I think, kind of. Neither style is good or bad. They reveal how someone perceives their position in the interaction. Pay attention to how a person's voice changes depending on who they're speaking to. Do they sound respectful with authority but dismissive with subordinates? Do they soften with some people and harden with others? These shifts reveal values, insecurities, and power awareness. The voice reveals self-concept. Emotionally, intelligent listeners don't just hear words. They hear fear, excitement, resistance, and relief. They notice when energy rises and falls. They sense when someone is speaking from truth and when they are speaking from defense. But this skill requires discipline. If you are planning your response while someone is speaking, you will miss everything. If you are waiting to prove a point, you will misread emotion. To hear the voice clearly, you must listen without agenda. Presence sharpens perception. When you listen fully, people who feel it, they slow down. They reveal more. Their voice relaxes, and when their guard drops, truth surfaces naturally without pressure. This is not about catching lies. It's about understanding emotional reality. In negotiations, relationships, leadership, and conflict, vocal awareness gives you an edge, not because it makes you manipulative, but because it makes you responsive. You know when to push and when to pause, when to clarify and when to stay silent. Silence is sometimes the most intelligent response. As you develop this skill, you'll notice your own voice changing. You'll speak more slowly. You'll pause more intentionally. You'll become aware of how your tone affects others. This self-awareness deepens connection. People don't remember everything you say. They remember how your voice made them feel. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when words, body, face, and voice fall out of alignment. When deception creates pressure and truth begins to leak, because no matter how carefully a lie is constructed, stress always leaves a trace, and the voice is one of the first places it appears. Chapter 5. Why lies always? Lies are built with words. Truth leaks through pressure, and pressure always leaves a trace. Most people think lying is about confidence. They imagine liars as nervous, shifty, and obvious. But the truth is more complex. Skilled liars often appear calm. They maintain eye contact. They speak smoothly. They control their posture. And that's exactly why so many lies succeed. The real giveaway is not nervousness. It's cognitive strain. Lying requires effort. The brain must invent a story, suppress the truth track, consistency monitor reactions, and adjust behavior all at the same time. This mental overload creates stress, and stress leaks through the body, the voice, and timing. No matter how skilled the liar is, truth is recalled. Lies are constructed. This is why timing matters so much. A truthful answer usually comes quickly. It's retrieved from memory. A deceptive answer often arrives with delay. The speaker pauses, repeats the question, buys time. Not because they are slow, but because they are building something that doesn't exist. That pause is not silence. It's assembly. Another common leakage point is distancing language. When people lie, they often subconsciously distance themselves from the falsehood. Instead of saying, "I didn't do it," they say, "That wasn't done," or "The situation happened." Personal pronouns disappear. Ownership fades. Language reveals relationship to truth. Excessive detail is another red flag. Truth is usually simple. Lies are often over-explained. When someone provides unnecessary details for a basic question, they may be trying to sound convincing rather than honest. The story becomes heavy rehearsed and oddly precise. The mind adds padding when it feels exposed. The voice also struggles under deception. Pitch may rise slightly. Tone may flatten unnaturally. The rhythm becomes inconsistent. Fillers increase. The speaker may clear their throat or swallow repeatedly. These are physiological responses to stress, not moral failures. The body prepares for threat. Hands often reveal what words conceal. Truthful speakers use natural gestures that align with speech. Deceptive speakers may restrict movement to avoid exposure or fidget excessively as stress builds. Touching the face, neck, or mouth often increases during moments of internal conflict. But here is the critical distinction. Stress does not equal lying. Lying creates stress. This is why baseline behavior matters more than any single signal. A naturally anxious person may show many stress indicators. While telling the truth, a calm person may show only subtle changes while lying. The key is deviation. What changes when and under what conditions? Watch for incongruence. When words, tone, body language, and facial expressions don't align, something is off. Someone says they're calm, but their body tightens. They claim confidence, but their voice wavers. They insist honesty, but their gestures retreat. Incongruence creates unease for a reason. The system doesn't match. Another powerful signal is over-assertion. Phrases like, "To be honest," "I swear," or "Believe me," often appear when credibility feels threatened. Truth rarely needs reinforcement. The need to insist can indicate insecurity about acceptance. Silence is also revealing. When you stop talking, liars often feel compelled to fill the space. Truthful speakers are more comfortable letting silence exist. They don't feel pressure to perform. Silence gives liars room to make mistakes. Let silence do the work. Mirroring patterns also shift under deception. When people feel aligned, they naturally synchronize. When someone is hiding something, they may break mirroring unconsciously, leaning away, crossing arms, angling the body defensively. Distance increases when vulnerability rises. Facial expressions often betray lies in flashes. A smirk of contempt, a flicker of fear, a brief tightening of the jaw. These micro-expressions appear before the mask is restored. They are not proof, but they are clues. Clues invite observation, not accusation. Effective lie detection is not about catching people. It's about staying emotionally neutral. When you become reactive, you signal threat. When you accuse, you trigger defense. When you remain calm, people reveal more than they intend. Professionals often ask the same question in different ways. Truth remains consistent, lies adapt, details shift, timelines blur. The story evolves as pressure increases. Truth stands still, lies move. Another technique is cognitive load. Asking someone to recall events in reverse order or describe sensory details increases mental strain. Truthful memories withstand this. Fabricated ones collapse under complexity. But in everyday life, your greatest tool is patience. You don't need to expose lies immediately. You need to observe patterns over time. As you learn this skill, something changes inside you. You stop rushing to believe, but you also stop rushing to distrust. You become discerning rather than suspicious. This is emotional maturity. Understanding deception also increases compassion. People lie to protect themselves, to avoid shame, to maintain identity. Seeing this doesn't excuse dishonesty, but it explains it. And explanation gives you power without bitterness. When you understand why people lie, you stop taking it personally. The goal is not to live in doubt. The goal is to live in clarity. As we move forward, remember this. Deception is not hidden perfectly. It leaks through pressure points, timing, voice, body language, and emotion. Your job is not to hunt lies, but to notice where truth struggles to stay buried. In the next chapter, we'll shift from momentary behavior to deeper structure, from stress responses to personality patterns. Because while emotions change, personality shapes how people respond again and again. And once you see those patterns, human behavior becomes far less mysterious. Chapter 6. Personality patterns shape everything. Emotions change. Situations shift. Personality patterns remain. Most people try to understand others by focusing on moods. They ask, why is this person acting this way right now? But skilled observers ask a deeper question. How does this person consistently respond when faced with stress, power, intimacy, or uncertainty? That question reveals personality. Personality is not what someone says about themselves, it's what they repeat. While emotions rise and fall, personality shapes the direction those emotions take. Two people can feel the same fear and respond in completely different ways. One becomes controlling, the other withdraws. One seeks reassurance, the other seeks distance. The feeling is shared. The pattern is not. This is why understanding personality changes everything. When you recognize someone's core patterns, their behavior stops feeling random. Reactions become predictable. Conflicts become less personal, and communication becomes far more effective. Patterns don't explain everything, but they explain enough. At the foundation of modern psychology lies a simple truth. Human behavior is more consistent than we like to believe. Most people react in familiar ways across different settings, work relationships, stress, success, and failure. They may adapt on the surface, but the core remains. One useful framework for understanding this consistency is the Big Five personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and emotional stability. You don't need to memorize definitions. You need to observe behavior. People high in openness tend to explore ideas, enjoy novelty, and think abstractly. They speak in concepts. They ask why. They are comfortable with ambiguity. Low openness individuals prefer structure, routine, and clarity. They speak concretely. They value tradition and predictability. Conscientiousness reveals how someone handles responsibility. High conscientious individuals plan, follow through, and respect structure. Low conscientious individuals are more spontaneous, flexible, and sometimes inconsistent. Neither is good or bad. Each has strengths and weaknesses. Extroversion is not about being loud. It's about energy direction. Extroverted individuals gain energy from interaction. They think out loud. They gesture freely. Introverted individuals gain energy from reflection. They pause before speaking. They process internally. Confusing introversion with insecurity is a common mistake. Agreeableness shows how people handle harmony. Highly agreeable individuals prioritize cooperation and empathy. They avoid conflict and seek consensus. Low agreeableness individuals value truth over harmony. They challenge directly. They are not necessarily rude. They are often honest. Emotional stability or neuroticism reveals how someone responds to stress. Emotionally stable individuals regulate themselves under pressure. High neuroticism individuals experience stronger emotional reactions and may over-apologize, worry, or react defensively. Again, these are tendencies, not judgments. Beyond traits, personality shows up clearly in how people relate to others. Some seek closeness quickly. Some guard independence fiercely. Some oscillate between the two. These patterns often form early in life and repeat unconsciously in adult relationships. People don't argue randomly. They argue in patterns. Watch how someone handles disagreement. Do they confront directly? Do they withdraw? Do they deflect with humor? Do they escalate? These responses reveal more about personality than any self-description ever could. Another helpful lens is motivational orientation. Some people are driven by achievement, others by security, others by approval, others by autonomy. These motivations shape decisions, communication styles, and emotional triggers. If you challenge someone's need for control, they resist. If you threaten someone's need for approval, they panic. Personality patterns also emerge in group settings. Dominant individuals take the floor naturally. Influential types use storytelling and emotion. Steady types support quietly. Analytical types question details. These roles repeat across environments. Watch who interrupts. Watch who adapts. Consistency across situations is the giveaway. Anyone can behave differently once. Personality reveals itself over time. Pay attention to how someone responds when tired, stressed, praised, criticized, or ignored. These moments strip away performance and expose default patterns. People reveal who they are under pressure. Understanding personality patterns also protects you from misinterpretation. When you stop expecting everyone to respond like you would, frustration decreases. You no longer label people as difficult or cold. You see them as different. Difference is not dysfunction. This shift creates emotional intelligence. You begin adjusting communication instead of forcing connection. You speak directly with direct people. You soften with sensitive ones. You provide structure for those who need it. You give space to those who value autonomy. This is calibration, not manipulation. The most effective leaders understand personality deeply. They don't motivate everyone the same way. They don't punish emotional reactions. They don't understand. They work with patterns rather than against them. The same is true in relationships. When you recognize someone's attachment style, conflict becomes less dramatic. A partner who withdraws during stress may not be uncaring. They may be self-regulating. A partner who seeks reassurance may not be needy. They may be protecting connection. Understanding replaces resentment. But personality awareness also requires boundaries. Not all patterns are healthy. Some people consistently manipulate, avoid accountability, or dominate emotionally. Recognizing these patterns early protects you from prolonged damage. Patterns predict behavior. If someone repeatedly avoids responsibility, don't expect sudden ownership. If someone consistently deflects blame, don't expect accountability under pressure. Hope is not a strategy. Observation is, this is where many people struggle. They see patterns, but ignore them. They explain them away. They believe potential over evidence. But patterns are honest. They don't lie, they repeat. Believe what repeats. As you develop this awareness, your emotional life simplifies. You stop being surprised by the same behaviors. You stop expecting different results from unchanged patterns. You respond thoughtfully instead of emotionally. This creates calm. Understanding personality also deepens compassion. People are shaped by experiences they didn't choose. Their patterns once protected them. Seeing this doesn't mean tolerating harm. It means understanding origins, clarity without cruelty, compassion without blindness. In the chapters ahead, we'll expand this awareness beyond individuals. And because behavior doesn't exist in isolation, context shapes expression, power shapes posture, and situations shape responses. But remember this core truth. Personality patterns shape everything. Once you see them clearly, you stop reacting to moments and start understanding trajectories. You stop guessing intentions and start anticipating responses. And that is when reading people becomes less effortful and far more accurate. Chapter 7. Read the room before you read the person. Behavior does not exist in a vacuum. People respond to pressure before personality shows. Context shapes everything. Most people try to read individuals in isolation. They focus on facial expressions, posture, tone, and words without asking a more important question. What situation is this person responding to right now? Without context, even accurate observation becomes distorted. Before you read a person, read the room. Human behavior is adaptive. People adjust unconsciously based on environment, audience stakes, and power dynamics. The same individual can appear confident in one setting and withdrawn in another, not because they are inconsistent, but because the situation demands different responses. Imagine someone in a job interview then, with close friends, then at a funeral. The body voice and emotional expression change dramatically, not because the person is fake, but because context rewires behavior. Situations speak louder than traits. Situational awareness is the skill of scanning the environment before focusing on individuals. It's used by military leaders, intelligence professionals, and elite negotiators for a reason. When you understand the environment, individual behavior makes sense. Start by identifying power. Who holds authority in the room? Who is being evaluated? Who has something to lose? Who is being watched? Power shapes posture. People under authority often restrict movement, limit speech, and display controlled body language. People with authority relax, expand, and speak freely. Stiffness often means pressure, not deception. A quiet employee in a meeting may not lack confidence. They may be navigating hierarchy. A tense speaker may not be dishonest. They may be performing under scrutiny without recognizing power dynamics. These behaviors are easily misread. Next, read emotional temperature. Every room has a mood, tension, boredom, excitement, anxiety, curiosity. You can feel it before anyone speaks. This emotional climate influences everyone inside it. When tension is high, people close off. When safety is present, openness increases. When competition rises, defensiveness follows. Individuals absorb the emotional tone of their environment, whether they want to or not. The room sets the nervous system. Group dynamics are another critical layer. People behave differently in groups than they do alone. In groups, conformity increases. Emotions are suppressed. People perform roles rather than express truth. Silence becomes strategic. Laughter becomes social currency. Notice who leads the conversation. Notice who is ignored. Orientation tells you alignment. Who turns toward whom? Who mirrors whom? Who receives eye contact when decisions are made? These cues reveal informal power structures far more accurately than titles. When someone speaks and no one responds, their influence is low. When others lean in or mirror posture, influence is present. This is not about popularity. It's about perceived authority and trust. Watch reactions, not words. The environment itself also shapes behavior. Crowded spaces create defensiveness. Loud spaces reduce nuance. Formal spaces restrict movement. Seating position alters perceived status. A person at the head of a table appears more dominant because the position confers authority. Environment programs behavior. This is why skilled observers never isolate a signal. They ask what pressures are acting on this person right now. Is there time pressure, social pressure, performance pressure, emotional exposure? Even time of day matters. Fatigue lowers patience. Hunger increases irritability. Cognitive overload reduces emotional regulation. These are biological factors, not personality flaws. Misreading fatigue as hostility is a common mistake. Situational awareness also protects you from false assumptions. Someone checking their phone may not be disinterested. They may be awaiting urgent news. Someone pacing may not be deceptive. They may be regulating anxiety. Context clarifies behavior. Another powerful element is audience. People act differently when observed. Cameras change posture. Authority figures change tone. Strangers change boundaries. Privacy lowers defenses. Public exposure raises them. This is why the same person may feel cold in public and warm in private. They are not inconsistent. They are responding to observation. People perform when watched. Understanding this makes you more accurate and more compassionate. You stop labeling people as fake or guarded. You see the conditions shaping their behavior. Situational awareness also sharpens intuition. When you read the room first, individual cues become clearer. You know which signals matter and which are environmental noise. You stop over-interpreting harmless behaviors and start noticing meaningful deviations. Rid the background before focusing on the foreground. Skilled readers scan rooms instinctively. They ask silent questions. Where is attention flowing? Who feels safe? Who feels exposed? Who is trying to control the narrative? Who is adapting to survive? These questions anchor perception. Another overlooked element is emotional contagion. Emotions spread through groups unconsciously. Anxiety multiplies. Confidence stabilizes. Calm regulates. The most emotionally grounded person in a room often sets the tone without speaking. Your presence affects the room too. When you remain calm, others mirror it. When you slow down, tension decreases. When you listen deeply, safety increases. This is leadership without authority. But situational awareness also requires restraint. You don't confront behavior without understanding pressure. You don't challenge defensiveness without assessing safety. You don't demand honesty in environments that punish vulnerability. Safety precedes truth. This principle changes how you communicate. You choose timing carefully. You wait for quieter moments. You create privacy when necessary. You reduce threat before asking meaningful questions. This is not manipulation. It is intelligence. As you practice this skill, you'll notice fewer misunderstandings. You'll stop mislabeling people. You'll stop reacting to surface behavior. Instead, you'll respond to underlying forces. You'll become harder to provoke and easier to trust. Reading the room also reveals hidden opportunities. Moments when tension peaks. Moments when influence is possible. Moments when silence carries more weight than speech. The most impactful people speak at the right moment, not the loudest one, before moving to the next chapter. Anchor this truth. People are not random. They are responsive. When you understand what they are responding to, behavior becomes clear. In the next chapter, we'll move from external awareness to internal resonance, emotional intelligence, because beyond observing signals, true understanding requires feeling what others cannot say. But that skill only works when context is clear. First read the room, then read the person. Chapter 8, Emotional Intelligence. Feeling what others can't say. You can see behavior. You can hear words, but emotional intelligence lets you feel what's underneath. Reading people is not only an observational skill, it is an emotional one. You can memorize body language. You can study facial expressions. You can analyze tone and timing, but without emotional intelligence, all of that information stays flat, technical, distant, incomplete. Emotional intelligence is what gives meaning to signals. It is the ability to recognize emotion, yours and theirs, without being controlled by it. It is sensing what someone feels without needing them to explain it. It is staying present with discomfort instead of reacting to it. This is where most people struggle. They see emotion and rush to fix it. They feel tension and try to escape it. They sense anger and match it. Low emotional intelligence reacts. High emotional intelligence regulates. Everything begins with self-awareness. If you are emotionally flooded, angry, anxious, distracted, you will misread others. Your internal state becomes a filter that distorts perception. You project your fear onto neutral behavior. You interpret silence as rejection. You hear threat where none exists. This is why emotionally intelligent observers slow down before interpreting anything. Regulation comes before perception. When you regulate your breathing posture and internal dialogue, your nervous system settles. And when your system is calm, it can accurately sense others. You notice subtleties instead of being hijacked by them. Emotion is contagious. Humans unconsciously mirror each other's emotional states. Anxiety spreads quickly, so does calm. The most regulated person in the room often sets the emotional tone without saying a word. Presence is influence. Emotionally intelligent people listen beyond content. They hear emotional subtext. Someone might say it's fine, but their voice carries disappointment. They might joke, but their eyes show fatigue. They might argue, but beneath the anger is fear of being dismissed. EQ hears what isn't said. This doesn't require guessing. It requires attention. People rarely hide emotion perfectly. They soften certain words. They pause at specific moments. Their energy shifts mid-sentence. These are emotional signals, not intellectual ones. And emotional signals require emotional listening. Another core element of emotional intelligence is non-reactivity. When someone expresses anger, low EQ meets it with defense or escalation. High EQ meets it with curiosity, not agreement. Curiosity, they ask internally, what is this emotion protecting? Anger often protects fear. Defensiveness often protects shame. Withdrawal often protects overwhelm. When you see protection instead of attack, your response changes. You don't take the bait. You don't personalize the emotion. You don't lose your center. This is why emotionally intelligent people feel safe to be around. They don't punish emotion. They don't absorb it either. They allow it to exist without being consumed by it. Boundaries are part of EQ. Another skill is noticing emotional transitions. People don't always enter and leave interactions in the same emotional state. Someone may arrive energized and leave withdrawn. Someone may begin guarded and soften gradually. These shifts tell a story. Emotionally intelligent observers notice when energy changes. They gently acknowledge it. You seem quieter than earlier. That topic shifted something. This naming, when done without accusation, creates space. It invites honesty without forcing it. EQ is not confrontation. It's attunement. Emotional intelligence also recognizes proportionality. Is the emotional response appropriate to the situation? When someone explodes over something minor, the emotion likely has deeper roots. When someone seems numb during something significant, they may be overwhelmed or dissociated. EQ sees layers. This matters deeply in relationships. In romantic connections, emotional intelligence determines longevity. Partners with high EQ notice microshifts. They sense when reassurance is needed and when space is healthier. They validate emotion without trying to control it. Validation is not agreement. Saying that makes sense does not mean you're right. It means I see you. And being seen is one of the most regulating experiences a human can have. In leadership, EQ separates authority from influence. Emotionally intelligent leaders don't just manage tasks, they manage emotional climates. They sense burnout before performance drops. They notice disengagement before resentment forms. They address morale, not just metrics. People don't leave jobs. They leave emotional environments. High EQ leaders listen for tone shifts in meetings. They notice when voices go quiet. They feel when tension rises, and they respond by slowing down, clarifying expectations, or creating psychological safety. Safety unlocks honesty. Emotional intelligence also involves calibration, adjusting your energy to meet others where they are. If someone speaks softly and slowly, responding with intensity creates friction. If someone is animated and expressive, responding with flatness creates distance. Matching energy without mimicking signals. Understanding. Alignment builds rapport. This is why some people feel instantly easy to talk to. They are emotionally agile. They adjust naturally. They don't force conversations into their preferred rhythm. But EQ is not emotional flooding. High emotional de-intelligence does not mean absorbing everyone else's feelings. It means recognizing them without losing your own center. It means empathy with boundaries. You can care without carrying. This distinction protects you from burnout and manipulation. When someone tries to pull you into guilt, chaos, or urgency, EQ allows you to pause. You feel the pressure, but you don't act from it. You respond from clarity. To develop emotional intelligence, practice these principles. Listen fully without planning your reply. Notice emotion before content. Validate feeling before offering solutions. Stay curious instead of defensive. Regulate yourself before interpreting others. And most importantly, stay present. Presence is rare. Presence is powerful. Emotionally intelligent people don't rush conversations. They allow silence. They don't interrupt vulnerability. They don't hijack emotion with advice. They hold space. And holding space is one of the most influential skills a human can develop. When people feel emotionally safe with you, they open. Personal preferences distort perception. This is why intuition must be trained. Training intuition begins with observation. Every time you consciously observe behavior, emotion, and outcome, you feed your intuitive system clean data. Over time, patterns consolidate. Recognition speeds up. Intuition becomes sharper and more reliable. Pattern recognition is intuition's foundation. Think of experienced professionals, doctors, pilots, firefighters. They make split-second decisions not because they guess, but because they've seen similar patterns hundreds of times. Their intuition is informed. The same principle applies to reading people. When you consistently observe how tone shifts before conflict, how posture changes before withdrawal, how silence appears before dishonesty, your intuition learns eventually. You don't need to analyze each signal, but knowing doesn't mean certainty. Healthy intuition suggests. Ego insists. A trained intuitive response feels calm, not urgent. It doesn't demand immediate action. It simply nudges awareness. Anxiety-driven reactions feel loud, rushed, and emotionally charged. Learn the difference. If a feeling pressures you to act immediately, question it. If it quietly asks you to pause, observe, or wait, that's intuition working properly. Intuition rarely yells. Fear does. Another way to train intuition is reflection. After interactions, review outcomes. Ask yourself, what did I notice? What did I feel? What happened next? This feedback loop refines its accuracy. You learn when intuition was right and when it was distorted. Reflection turns experience into wisdom. It's also important to separate intuition from bias. Bias jumps to conclusions. Intuition stays open. Bias looks for confirmation. Intuition stays curious. Bias resists new information. Intuition adjusts when new data appears. If you feel certain without evidence, that's bias. If you feel aware without judgment, that's intuition. Context strengthens intuition. Intuition works best when combined with situational awareness. A feeling of discomfort in a tense environment means something different than the same feeling in a relaxed one. Without context, intuition loses accuracy. Always ask, what might be influencing this feeling? Another key principle is emotional regulation. If you are emotionally dysregulated, angry, insecure, eager for approval, your intuition becomes noisy. Emotional intelligence clears the channel when your internal state is calm. Intuitive signals become easier to detect and interpret. Calm is intuition's ally. Intuition also improves with honesty. When you ignore intuitive signals repeatedly, accuracy fades. You teach your system that awareness doesn't matter. Over time, intuition goes quiet, not because it's wrong, but because it's been ignored. Respect builds sensitivity. Trusting intuition does not mean acting impulsively. It means factoring intuitive awareness into decisions alongside logic and evidence. The most effective decisions integrate both. Logic explains. Intuition guides in relationships. Intuition helps you sense misalignment early. A partner's words may reassure, but something feels off. Rather than accuse, intuition suggests curiosity. Ask questions. Observe patterns. Let clarity emerge. In leadership, intuition helps you sense morale shifts before performance drops. It alerts you to unspoken resistance or quiet disengagement. You don't react, you investigate. In negotiations, intuition detects when something doesn't add up. Timing feels wrong. Energy shifts. You slow down instead of pushing forward. Intuition protects when logic arrives too late. But intuition also needs humility. Sometimes intuition is wrong, not because it's useless, but because data was incomplete. If you feel certain without evidence, that's bias. If you feel aware without judgment, that's intuition. Context strengthens intuition. Intuition works best when combined with situational awareness. A feeling of discomfort in a tense environment means something different than the same feeling in a relaxed one. Without context, intuition loses accuracy. Always ask, what might be influencing this feeling? Another key principle is emotional regulation. If you are emotionally dysregulated, angry, insecure, eager for approval, your intuition becomes noisy. Emotional intelligence clears the channel when your internal state is calm. Intuitive signals become easier to detect and interpret. Calm is intuition's ally. Intuition also improves with honesty. When you ignore intuitive signals repeatedly, accuracy fades. You teach your system that awareness doesn't matter. Over time, intuition goes quiet, not because it's wrong, but because it's been ignored. Respect builds sensitivity. Trusting intuition does not mean acting impulsively. It means factoring intuitive awareness into decisions alongside logic and evidence. The most effective decisions integrate both. Logic explains. Intuition guides in relationships. Intuition helps you sense misalignment early. A partner's words may reassure, but something feels off. Rather than accuse, intuition suggests curiosity. Ask questions. Observe patterns. Let clarity emerge. In leadership, intuition helps you sense morale shifts before performance drops. It alerts you to unspoken resistance or quiet disengagement. You don't react, you investigate. In negotiations, intuition detects when something doesn't add up. Timing feels wrong. Energy shifts. You slow down instead of pushing forward. Intuition protects when logic arrives too late. But intuition also needs humility. Sometimes intuition is wrong, not because it's useless, but because data was incomplete. When evidence contradicts intuition, update your understanding. This flexibility keeps intuition accurate. Rigidity kills intuition. Adaptation refines it. Another common mistake is outsourcing intuition to others. People often ask for validation instead of listening to their own signals. While outside perspectives matter, constant external confirmation weakens internal trust. You already sense more than you realize. Building intuition requires patience. It strengthens gradually. There is no shortcut. The reward is subtle but profound, a sense of alignment with reality. You stop second-guessing. You stop over-explaining. You trust yourself. This trust changes how you move through the world. You become less reactive. You choose better timing. You sense when to engage and when to step back. You avoid situations that don't feel right without needing justification. Clarity replaces confusion. As intuition sharpens, decision simplifies. You don't analyze endlessly. You recognize patterns quickly. You feel when something fits and when it doesn't. This is not impulsivity. This is integration. The goal is not perfection. The goal is awareness. When intuition is trained, it becomes a quiet advisor. It doesn't control you. It informs you, and when combined with observation, emotional intelligence, and context, it becomes one of your most powerful tools. In the next chapter, we'll explore how all of these skills, observation, emotional intelligence, and intuition come together. Because understanding people is not about dominance or control. It's about influence without manipulation. And that level of mastery requires ethics as much as awareness. But it begins here. Trust what you sense. Train how you interpret it. Chapter 10. From observation to influence without manipulation. Understanding gives you power. How you use it defines your character. Influence without ethics always collapses. By now, you've learned how people reveal themselves through behavior, facial expressions, body language, voice, emotional patterns, context, and intuition. You've learned how truth leaks under pressure and how personality shapes response. But one question remains. What do you do with this understanding? This is where many people go wrong. They treat insight as leverage. They use awareness to control. They confuse understanding with superiority. But true mastery doesn't dominate. It stabilizes. Influence is not about making people do what you want. It's about creating conditions where cooperation, trust, and openness emerge naturally. Manipulation forces outcomes. Influence invites alignment. Manipulation creates resistance. Influence creates choice. The difference lies in intention. Manipulation seeks advantage at another's expense. Influence seeks mutual clarity. Manipulation hides motives. Influence makes motives transparent. Manipulation rushes. Influence waits. And people feel the difference even if they can't explain it. The most influential people are not the most aggressive readers of others. They are the most regulated. They don't exploit vulnerabilities. They protect them. They don't expose emotional truths. They respect them. This restraint builds trust. Calibration is the bridge between observation and influence. Calibration means adjusting your response based on what you observe, not to control the other person, but to communicate more effectively. If someone is overwhelmed, you slow down. If someone is guarded, you soften. If someone is energized, you engage. You meet people where they are without losing who you are. This is not imitation. It is attunement. When someone feels attuned to their nervous system relaxes. When it relaxes, defenses drop. When defenses drop, honesty increases. And when honesty increases, influence becomes effortless. Pressure is no longer needed. Boundaries are a critical part of ethical influence. Understanding someone does not mean tolerating harmful behavior. Recognizing insecurity does not mean accepting manipulation. Seeing patterns does not require staying in unhealthy dynamics. Clarity strengthens boundaries. When you understand why someone behaves the way they do, you can respond without confusion. You say no without guilt. You disengage without anger. You stay firm without hostility. This is emotional strength. One of the most ethical uses of understanding is prevention. When you sense rising tension, you intervene early. When you notice withdrawal, you check in gently. When you detect misalignment, you slow the process down. You don't wait for conflict to explode before addressing it. Prevention is invisible leadership. Ethical influence also means knowing when not to influence. Sometimes, the most respectful response is silence. Sometimes, people need space, not insight. Sometimes allowing someone to experience consequences is more helpful than intervening. Wisdom knows when to step back. In relationships, ethical influence shows up as presence. You listen without fixing. You reflect without judging. You validate without surrendering your values. You allow growth without forcing change. You don't mold people. You understand them. In leadership, ethical influence builds cultures, not compliance. Teams follow leaders who feel safe, predictable, and fair. They disengage from those who feel calculating or manipulative, even if they can't articulate why. People trust energy before logic. Ethical influence also requires self-honesty. Ask yourself difficult questions. Are you using insight to connect or to win? Are you observing to understand or to control outcomes? Are you listening or waiting to deploy information? Your intention shapes your impact. When understanding is paired with ego, it becomes manipulation. When paired with humility, it becomes wisdom. Humility keeps curiosity alive. Ego shuts it down. Master readers remain curious. Another key principle is consent. Just because you can read someone doesn't mean you should reveal everything you see. Insight does not grant permission to confront. Timing and safety matter. Emotional truth shared without consent can feel invasive. Respect deepens influence. People are not puzzles to solve. They are experiences to understand. When you treat them that way, your presence changes. You become someone people feel safe around, someone they trust, someone they open up to naturally. That is real influence. As you integrate everything you've learned, you'll notice subtle changes. Conversations feel easier. Conflict feels less threatening. You sense when to speak and when to wait. You stop forcing clarity. You allow it to emerge. Effort decreases as accuracy increases. The final stage of mastery is becoming a mirror. A mirror does not distort. It does not exaggerate. It reflects calmly. When people see themselves clearly through you, without judgment, they adjust. Naturally, growth happens without pressure. Insight arises without confrontation. This is the highest form of influence, but it requires discipline. You must remain grounded. You must regulate your own emotions. You must choose ethics over advantage again and again, not because it's easy, but because it works. Manipulation burns bridges. Ethical influence builds them. In the final moments of this audiobook, we'll step back and look at the bigger picture. Because understanding people is not about mastering others. It's about mastering yourself. And when you do, that influence becomes a byproduct, not a goal. Understanding people changes how you see the world, but it changes how you see yourself even more. If there is one truth to take with you from this audiobook, it is this: people are rarely as confusing as they seem. Most confusion comes from noise, emotion, assumption, ego, and reaction. When that noise fades, behavior becomes clear, and clarity brings calm. Throughout this journey, you've learned how people reveal themselves without trying. Through behavior instead of words. Through faces that flicker before control arrives. Through bodies that respond before explanations form. Through voices that carry emotion beneath language. Through patterns that repeat. Through environments that shape reactions. Through intuition that whispers before logic speaks. None of these skills were about tricks. None of them were about control. They were about awareness. When awareness grows, something subtle happens inside you. You stop rushing to judge. You stop personalizing reactions that were never about you. You stop forcing conversations towards certainty. Instead, you allow understanding to unfold, and that changes everything. People feel it when they are being watched, but they feel something entirely different when they are being seen. Being seen is rare. It's regulating. It's disarming. When someone feels seen, their nervous system relaxes. Defenses soften. Performance drops. Truth rises not because it's demanded, but because it feels safe. This is why the most influential people in any room rarely announce themselves. They don't dominate conversations. They don't rush to speak. They listen deeply. They respond intentionally. Their presence alone creates stability. They don't extract information. They invite it. As you move forward, remember this understanding. Understanding people does not mean carrying their emotions. It does not mean fixing their problems. It does not mean tolerating behavior that harms you. Understanding brings clarity, and clarity strengthens boundaries. You can be compassionate without being permissive. You can be perceptive without being manipulative. You can be calm without being passive. This balance is what separates maturity from technique. There will be moments when you sense misalignment, when something feels off, when patterns repeat. Trust that awareness. Don't rush to confront. Don't rush to explain. Let observation guide timing. Let calm guide response. Wisdom moves slowly. There will also be moments when you feel connection deepen, conversations flow. Silence feels comfortable. People open up without prompting. Notice those moments. They are signs that your presence is doing its work. You didn't change them. You regulated yourself. And that is the real mastery. As you apply what you've learned, don't aim for perfection. Aim for presence. You will misread people sometimes. Everyone does. The difference is what you do next. Do you react defensively, or do you adjust? Do you cling to being right, or do you stay curious? Curiosity keeps perception alive. Over time, you'll notice that reading people requires less effort. Patterns appear quickly. Emotional shifts feel familiar. You know when to speak and when silence carries more weight. You stop overthinking interactions after they end. Peace replaces rumination. And perhaps the most important change of all, you begin trusting yourself, not because you control outcomes, but because you understand dynamics. You see what's happening. You know how to respond. And you're no longer dependent on validation to feel secure. This confidence is quiet. It doesn't need proof. The world doesn't need more people who outsmart others. It needs people who can understand without exploiting influence, without dominating, and lead without force. People who make others feel safe to be human. If you take nothing else from this audiobook, take this with you. The highest level of understanding is not exposure, it's respect. When you see people clearly and still choose integrity, you become someone others trust instinctively. And trust is the deepest form of influence. So, as you walk back into your conversations, relationships, and decisions, slow down. Observe more than you speak. Listen beyond words. Regulate before reacting, and let understanding guide your presence. Because when people feel seen, they soften. When they soften, they open. And when they open, you don't need to control anything. You've already become influential.